And this is where I say don't be optimistic. Be negative, right? Yes,
We
exactly.
finally got her there, guys.
Yes!
We dragged her down.
Be negative. But it's true. They prey on everyone. But it's the people that are most susceptible are the people who are desperate.
Life today is chaotic, unpredictable, and constantly shifting. But within the chaos lies opportunity, and we're here to seize it. This is Generation Uncharted.
Georgie Frost, thank you so much for joining me. You are a financial broadcaster. You're the host of the This Is Money podcast. And I really wanted to get you on because right now, the financial outlook looks pretty bleak. So we've got people being taxed at record rates. Housing costs are swallowing up more than half of people's living wage. We're already bracing ourselves for sort of more pain when the Chancellor delivers her autumn budget. At the same time, there is a big push to get people more financially literate and to really help them understand money and to help them navigate their finances a lot better. But my first question to you is really, how much difference does financial knowledge really make when it feels like the situation is so stacked against us financially?
Lewis, knowledge is power. It's so good to speak to you after. I think it's been a gap of about 10 years. Before we start the podcast, can I just say, as a money journalist, I'm the eternal optimist. So don't listen to that intro and go, oh, bury your head in the sand. I don't want to hear anything about it. I am the eternal optimist. So prepare yourself for hopefully an invigorating podcast. Financial knowledge is, look, it's essential. There are certain things, let's say driving a car in the rain. You cannot control the rain, but you can certainly learn how to drive the car better. Be more in control of it. Knowledge is like that. It prepares you for the storms that can come. Look, it's not going to completely keep you dry. As we've seen, my goodness me, we've been through some really weird times, I think is the best way to put it. COVID was, well up there. We've had the financial crisis. We've had all sorts of things. And it seems like it's not never ending. Tariffs and Trump and all sorts of things. You can only do what you can do. And that is actually quite a lot. And it goes back to some of the basics. Financial knowledge is not going to fix a completely broken system, but it can absolutely help you navigate it better. Avoid all those traps. Make the most of what you do have and hopefully help you get a little bit more.
I love that answer. And actually, I hope that by the end of this podcast that I feel better and more infused about money. So let's kick off on the country then, because I think that's obviously the thing that people feel the most, just that the country is just spiraling out of control. So when it comes to the finances of the country and, we've got the budget coming up, is it as bad as we think? Or is it all, the newspapers just making more headlines because drama sells? How bad is it?
It's a bit of both, isn't it? I mean, look, when I said about optimism, I'm not some sort of Pollyanna-ish person that goes around going, everything's great, the bins are full and there's potholes in the road, but it's okay, guys. No, look, we're stuck. We're not doomed, we're stuck. Stagnant growth. We do have, as you said there, really high taxes, a housing market that is broken, particularly for young people. I feel really sorry for the situation that young people are in at the moment. It's so different to an older generation that just says to them, don't have avocados, please, because that's going to help everything, right? Your lattes and avocados is going to fix a system which is completely against you. But either way, the optimism comes from, if you constantly, and it comes from a personal level as well as a government level, if you're constantly telling yourself, I'm terrible with money, I'm rubbish at this, you will be. You will be, because you're not going to do anything about it. And we saw that on a kind of national scale now, it doesn't matter who you voted for, Lewis. It doesn't matter who I voted for. But I think everyone in the country was a bit fed up after 14 years of the Conservative government. And they thought, well, change is as good as a whatever. And so I think the Labour Party came in on quite a crest of an optimistic wave. People wanted them to do well, whatever colour you were, as it were, blue or red or yellow or whatever. You wanted people to do well because we want the country to do well. And in came Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and said, we're in this terrible black hole. And all of a sudden the markets and everyone else is looking and going, what? They hadn't really been that like worried about us. And then all of a sudden everyone's going, should we be worried? And I think we've kind of been in that negativity, miserabilism is what we call it on our podcast, ever since. And they've been trying to backtrack. They've been trying to reset. I think we've had about 3 resets. But how can you get anything like growth in the country? We know we do. We need to get businesses investing, people working, all those sorts of things to get money flowing and the growth going. You're not going to get that if people feel really miserable. They're going to keep the monies in their pockets. That's businesses and individuals. And we're going to keep stagnating, which is what we're doing. But when I go back to the eternal optimism, what I will say is we are a very resilient bunch. I've mentioned there the things that we've gone through: COVID, the financial crisis, dot-com boom, if you're that old, all sorts of things. We've had ridiculously high inflation. We come out the other side. Some people are suffering. That is I'm not diminishing that at all. Absolutely, people are suffering, but we are incredibly resilient. And what makes me very proud of this country, having spent a lot of time abroad, I work a lot abroad, I spent a lot of time in Spain, is we do have a very amazing volunteering and community spirit. We kind of want to help each other, and I really like that. So, yeah, we do a bit of navel gazing and we can be a bit miserable at times, but, as long as we do it with a bit of black humour.
You keep answering with positive answers, and then my questions are all negative.
It's fine.
But on that, I've got to ask, when was the last time you felt, the country's on the up? Because I think a lot of people feel that since the financial crash, it's just been almost a slow motion car crash where it's gone a little bit better. We've skidded a little bit less this month, but it just kind of feels like it's sort of just almost getting worse.
Yeah, and it does feel like that. And you spoke about the headlines, and the headlines, we know, I'm a journalist, we know that good news doesn't sell. Bad news sells, absolutely. Where my optimism will come from is less about looking at the country holistically, which is a very hard thing to do, is I look at, or try to look at, the alternative way of looking at kind of what money is and what it does. And with that, I mean, okay, so as a young person, you are very unlikely to have a job for life. You are very unlikely to be able to buy a house with just 2 times your yearly earnings, right? You are very unlikely to get a final salary pension. But then I ask you and I ask myself, because I'm talking about a time, let's say, when my mum was young. That was also a time my mum couldn't open a bank account by herself because she was a woman. That was also a time she wasn't encouraged to go to university. She did. She became a doctor. The opportunities now are so much better and more rich. Our lives, the travel that we can do, the opportunities that we have. I own my own business. You start a podcast, you can do some incredibly exciting things. I couldn't think of anything worse than a job for life. And then you retire. And then what do? You just sit and deal with your potted plants or something.
Knitting.
I don't mind knitting, right, Layla? I'm going to defend knitting.
Okay.
Knitting's quite mindful, right?
All
right.
right.
I'm a big fan of knitting. But even so, like, the opportunities that we have, I think, to have that work-life balance. Like, I could never imagine the idea of working, when I first started out in journalism, the idea of, working from home, or, I'm going to go to Spain for, during the lockdown and the pandemic. I think I spent about 4 or 5 months in Spain, and I did everything that I could have done, my podcasts, my TV, my radio, everything, my written journalism, all from abroad. Again, you have those opportunities now. There's so much more choice. You don't have to have 2.4 kids, etc. So yes, when we talk about the general economy, we're so used to this idea that every generation is going to benefit more than the last one. And I'm so sorry to say it, are not going to be in that situation. We are not in that situation. Really, we're not. And all of this speculation about what's going to happen to state pensions and all that is just loading even more problems onto young people. But what I will say is look at your individual life, what you want it to be, and you have so much more, I would suggest.
I love that. Let's take
optimism
more
again?
of an optimistic tone. No, but you are right, because what are we supposed to do? Say, oh, well, looks bleak, let's throw our hands in the air and just give up?
Yeah,
we may as well try.
Look, I use the example of some relatives I've got. So my mum's sister has a house in some relatives I've got of my mum's age. So, or my mum and dad's age. So they have a house in France. They have a lovely house in Warwickshire. They've got 2 cars. My brother and they're teachers. They're both teachers. My brother is a teacher. he's my age, roundabout. He's not going to have 2 houses and 2 cars, right? I also look at other people's parents, and they've got these, lovely 1 million properties or 1.5 million in wherever, Surrey or Manchester or something, Cheshire. I don't think I will be able to afford that anytime soon. But then I ask myself, do I want to? Is that my raison d'etre in life, to have a multi-million-pound house where I'm plodding around in it? Or would I rather use that money for things that give me value, like have meaning for me, that have of value to me? I know which one I would choose.
Exactly. So it's a lot about priorities. Well, let's move on to if someone is listening to this and thinking, my God, yes, I do need to take money seriously. And it's just sort of this thing that just sort of flitters in and flitters out. And I wish that less of it flittered out. How much time a week should someone really be spending on figuring out what on earth an ISA is, what on earth a state pension versus a private pension is? Like, how much time a week is it going to take for someone to really upskill?
Look, if you are the type of person who is really good at this, right? You allot yourself 30 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, let's say like Duolingo, right, for finance, and you read a little bit, you learn a little bit, listen to a little podcast, right? All power to your hand, but I am not that person. So don't think of it like this is homework. Think of it like, okay, if I watch The Big Short, the movie, if I listen to this podcast with you, if I just, I don't know, watch a couple of TikTok videos with someone who's legit, all of that counts. And don't just go, right.
So watching a movie counts. I love that. That's my kind of revision.
There's some really great stuff, right? Just to get you Wall Street or whatever, anything that gets you engaged in the subject, and for you to realize, and I've just done a video series called Bread and Honey, and the whole premise is about it, is that money is really integral to your life, but it's a lifestyle podcast rather than a money podcast about which talks about money. So we talk about questions like, are you financially better off single? And we sort of talk about all our dating experiences and all that, because all of that relates to money. All relates to money. As soon as you start realizing it's not just pensions and the FT, which I love the FT, by the way. This is no criticism of the FT, right? But, it can be quite daunting. But actually, no, it's about all the things around you. And once you start realizing that, your relationships with people, why is your other half really annoying you when he goes out and spends all his money at the, drop of a hat? Oh, because you've got different spending philosophies about it. Right. Okay. So if you start thinking about money like that and stop thinking about it like it's maths homework, because I wasn't that good at maths at school. So, yeah, like I say, if you're the sort of person that's really great at that sort of thing and allotting a time, then go ahead. Great, do it. But the rest, as little, often, as much as you can, about something, a little often about something that will entertain you, that is relevant to your life. So, maybe don't look at what ETFs are if you're thinking about buying a house right now, that sort of thing.
I did want to circle back a little bit and talk about the younger people, of which I would like to still class myself as. And the first question would be, do you feel that we have a tax system that disincentivizes us from being entrepreneurial or from starting on our own? Because I will bring in a bit of my own experience here. So as you sort of know, so I'm sure you see me around the media as well. I actually have a full-time job, but then I do 2 podcasts. I wrote a book. I write a lot of articles. I'm on TV and radio, and I go and do speeches. So I have my PAYE job and then a job where, you'll sort of pay cash in hand. So I had to do my first tax return last year or whatever it was. And so I actually hired some tax people to do it. I basically had to give back everything I'd made in that year outside of my PAYE job. And I just had this moment of being like, well, what was the point of waking up at 4 a.m.? What was the point of going to bed at 4 a.m.? Like sleepless nights writing a book and being across my brief to go and do TVs and speeches when literally all of that money has pretty much had to go back to the tax people. Like, I may as well not have bothered.
Firstly, I'd find yourself a better accountant, because I was actually in a similar situation to you. I had a PAYE and I had a business account. I don't work in that kind of way anymore. I'm just a freelancer, self-employed. But if you can, one thing I might suggest, I don't know, because your ins and outs of your financial situation, but putting money into a pension is a really, really good thing to do, by the way. But I would ask you the question, firstly, because that's not a good situation, obviously. You do not want to be earning nothing and paying it all for tax. Then you do think, what's the point? But I ask you, what is the point? Why are you still here then?
Because I enjoy it.
Because you enjoy it. And you hope that eventually you will get to a stage where, I don't know, maybe this will become your full-time job, or maybe you will start not paying all of that money to the taxman, or you use it instead to fund your pension. The tax system, and there are lots of examples, the crazy system we have when you start earning over £100,000, etc., is convoluted. Yes, very. It is in danger of getting a lot worse because it feels the government are so desperately trying to find money wherever they can that everything is fair game at the moment. So it can disincentivize. However, I do think that there are people who are still, like yourself, building amazing things within it. And that is not to say you've got me on a bit where it's like, how optimistic can I be on this one? No, I do. I know, right? You might have stumped me already. No, I do think that this is something that we definitely need to take a look at. But I think that
and it's not just me, I'll say. There are other people I meet on the circuit who are also looking at their tax bill being like, what was the point of doing this?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. But going back to that 100,000 where you start paying this 60% tax rate, I don't think that would stop many people wanting to work harder to get a pay rise. It is a quirk in the system. It's just one, and there's lots of them, that really needs to get fixed. But I wonder how many people do not want to work hard, do not want to have that entrepreneurial spirit. Will this happen forever? I don't think so. I think we are starting to see, especially businesses, and look, I'm not here and getting out the mini violin for the millionaires and billionaires who are leaving the country, but it is a bellwether of how people feel about the country. It's still a great place to build a business. It really is. But it shouldn't be the case that people like yourself, who I have no understanding of how much you're earning, but I imagine it's not as much as a big famous coffee shop brand that we know. That is where it starts to, people need to understand it, and it needs to feel fair for people to pay it. Otherwise, what you'll get is people scamming the system, or, moving around the system. And that's not right either. So are we going to get reform? I don't think so. But keep on keeping on, Lewis, and you will get to a stage where hopefully you'll at least get a couple of pounds more than the taxman.
Thank you. So I'm going to leave this podcast recording, thinking I can do just about anything. I did actually want to just ask you where you stand, because I'm actually quite interested to know this from a person. Where do you stand on London? Because a lot of people now are saying, well, I'm paying so much money living in London, I'm just going to move out, and maybe I'll just commute in one day a week and do it one day in the office. A lot of people now, only do a few days in the office, but you're then someone that says, well, I'll just take off to Spain and work. So where do you stand on, you kind of need to be in London, or you should at least want to be in London, versus no, go out to the country and just come in one day a week?
Yeah, no. I've actually spent more time, I think, outside of London now than I have spent in it. I mean, I am on the environs now, but I mean, I've lived in Manchester, Yorkshire, Northeast, like it's Spain. I know good friends of mine who live in all around the country and do very well. Look, if you want to work at, I don't know, the Telegraph or the Times, or, a big national newspaper, for example, as a journalist, then you will need to be in London. But where I would say, the balance is it goes back to what is it that you want from your life and your career? Like, I liked London. Like, don't get me wrong, I liked it. It was great. It was great when I was young, younger. Obviously, I'm only 25 now, Lewis.
I know.
Yeah. No, but it was fun. It was great. I really like London. It's a ridiculous place to buy a property because it's so expensive, but it's not the be all and the end all by any stretch of the imagination. And you're seeing more and more companies move out. But again, I go back to, work isn't everything. You can build your own successful career, if you want to, wherever you want to do it, I would suggest. So, yeah, I'm not one of these sort of London-centric journalists that's like, London is life. It's not.
I love that, because as I'm getting older and I'm looking at, what could I buy for my money? A shed in London, or sort of a 4-bed semi-mansion in like Manchester. It's like, well... But then it's like, I think when you're in London, and I've been in London 15 years, it's like, well, if you leave London, you just turn to dust and disappear.
I mean, I did do a video series. So for my Bread and Honey video series, we looked at and interviewed someone who did leave London and went to live life in the country and absolutely loves it. In equal measure, I've read a lot of articles of people, obviously, who left during the pandemic, came back because they just couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
Again, it's know yourself. And this is where I go back to renting. As a financial journalist, I hear it all the time. As a British person, I hear it all the time that you have to buy. Buying is everything. An English person's home is their castle. I have been a very dyed-in-the-wool renter up until the age of 40, which was last year, basically, where I bought a house for the first time. And I will be honest with you, it wasn't the dream at all. There is nothing in me that was like, I really want to buy a property. It was life circumstance was just like, okay, this makes sense to do it. But being able to rent or renting meant I was able to live in places that I never would be able to afford to buy. So some lovely places in London, had a brilliant time. Oh, brilliant. Then I could move when the pandemic struck. I moved up to Yorkshire very quickly. I just got out my contract. I could go up. I had to leave bad relationships quickly. It meant that I could go and live in another country. So I bang the drum for renting. I do not bang the drum for the renting system that we have in this country. And I think we really need to sort that out. This old idea of rent to save money to buy is nonsense now when it costs more to rent than it does to pay off your mortgage. However, I do think that we need to reform the renting system. I think we need to build more houses. And we need to change the narrative that, you know what, renting is cool. And actually, if you are thinking of leaving London, don't buy somewhere immediately. What if you don't like it? Rent for a year, see how you like it. So yeah, I'm gonna bang the drum for renting.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think what's happened with housing where, people did buy it for, £3,000 and 5 raspberries back in the day, and now it's worth £1 million is just insane. And I do think as well, for me, I sometimes think, what could this country be if people weren't spending half their earnings on where they live? If it was just, where you live, whether you've bought or you rent, it's about 15% of your take-home pay. Imagine the amount of money people would have to invest in other people's things. So, you know what, I've got an idea, I'm going to go for it. I just think it's sad that we put in so much work for half of it to go on where we live.
I agree with you. I mean, you're more optimistic than I if you think that people are going to invest in themselves. They'll probably just buy more beer and stuff. But, either way, a consumer-led economy is not a bad thing. No, I agree with you. I think it's very stifling for young people. I hear the thing that frightens me the most, and I hear it more and more, is when young people in their 20s are saying, but if I don't find a partner, how can I buy a house? If I don't buy with my partner, and I'm thinking, red flag, red flag, red flag. Why? Whether you are with someone should not be down to a financial decision. It's weird and a bit creepy. Like, I think about who I might have settled down with at that age. No. No. If it means you have to rent a little bit longer, rent a little bit longer. Don't shackle yourself to someone that could turn out to be an absolutely awful thing. The one piece of greatest advice you will ever hear whenever you hear people saying about advice is your partner is the most important decision you will ever make in your life. Interestingly, single women are happier, by the way. Just saying, but that's still a decision.
Oh.
Yeah. In all the measures, single women are the happiest. I'm just saying, but, I'm happily coupled up, but, I was very happy when I was single too. But no, look, it's all of this comes back, and I'm jesting here, but I have intimated a lot of things here about renting, about being single, and the reason I'm doing that is because I do think it's time for young people to start redefining what money and values and ambition when it comes to financial ambition means for you. Not what it meant to your parents, because your parents don't have, my parents are so far removed from what is the reality of what you're facing right now. The opportunities you have, but also the disadvantages. So it's time for you to define yourself, what you want it to look like.
Well, let's talk about some of the opportunities then, and some of the things our parents didn't have. ChatGPT. Would you rate that as good financial advice? Can people get ahead by asking ChatGPT?
Look, I'm a big fan of ChatGPT. A big fan.
Me too.
But I say that as someone who's very experienced. I've been doing my career for 20 years. I think I've got a fairly good head on my shoulders. If you ask ChatGPT, because it did, do you give good advice? It said, yeah. I give great financial advice, it said. But it's not personalised, regulated advice. I mean, So yeah, look, it can only give you the parameters of what it finds. You have to put in the correct prompts, etc. But even then, it can make some really poor mistakes. Really poor mistakes. Like the other day, it was like, if Trump gets into office, and it was like counting 4 years instead of 5 years. And I was like, why are you doing that? And they said, oh, because I only go up until August 2024. You have to tell me if you want it to be current. I thought, wow, that's interesting. And I was also asking it some information about business accounts, and it was saying, oh, you can save into an ISA. I was like, no, you can't. You can't save into an ISA through a business account. It's an individual savings allowance. A business is not an individual. And it went, oh, yes, you're right.
Right.
So what I would say, and this leans on to another topic, which is also very, very relevant, and that's social media and stuff, is pinch of salt, guys. There are plenty of really, really great places to go to find great financial information and guidance and tips and knowledge. Money Saving Expert, This Is Money, The Times, all these sorts of places are great places to go. You probably don't need to go to ChatGPT, or if you do, ask it the question you want it to ask, double check it. Ask for ask it to deep dive and say, like, where's the resource? Only make sure that you get it from legitimate sources. Like, make sure your prompts are accurate.
That's a good hack. So if someone does feel they aren't good with money, I know you just mentioned a few, but what are the best apps, books, podcasts that you would say this is a good sort of jumping off point to get started?
So obviously I would say This Is Money podcast. So I do This Is Money. We've been doing it for 11 years now. And it is like three mates sat around having a beer. And we just discuss the kind of money themes of the week. There are loads of little tidbits in there. It's not dull. We have a laugh. We talk about our own foibles. I also do Bread and Honey. That's on YouTube. That's a lot more touchy-feely about money. All of it's a laugh, right? Because I have this view that for too long, finance has been just dull, honestly. And I wonder if it's been done like that on purpose so that we don't get engaged in it. But it doesn't have to be that way, because, I mean, how many areas of your life are touched by money? I cannot go on about this enough. It's every area of your life pretty much is touched by money. Anyway, great resources, I would say. Really simply, your banking app is likely to be a really good place to go, if nothing else. One, I would always check your bank account often. One, for scams, if nothing else. It's just that little bit of engagement. Don't bury your head in the sand. I was guilty as anyone of this. I spent years in debt. Like I come from a place where I know what it's like. I was a sports journalist with a bad back, couldn't work for a year. I know what it's like. So everything I say is my own personal experience of how I got to a level where I am fairly competent with money now, hopefully. But your banking app is a really great place. Just that little bit of knowledge. But a lot of them, so for example, Starling or Monzo or anything, will all have these sort of spending calculators, budget planners. They're all really useful just for you to be aware, because it's so easy nowadays with tap, tap, tap cards not to be that engaged with your money. It's so easy just to go out on a night out and woo, you've spent 100 quid. So that's a good place to start, definitely.
What about this Moneybox app? Because so many people have told me download Moneybox. So I've downloaded it, and that was 3 months ago and I haven't actually opened it yet. Should I open it? Is it worth it?
So I'm not going to give anybody any advice about what you should and shouldn't do, certainly. Right. However, what I will say is I used Moneybox. I downloaded it, I think the year after they started, so 2017. And I will say, for me at the time, was it 2016? It was when I was really, I just started a radio show about money. So I just moved from sport into finance, and I was really just trying to find my feet because I came, like I said, I had no background in money, zero background. And I downloaded this app, and it was every time you buy a coffee, let's say £2.50, if only you buy a coffee for £2.50, it would round it up if you want to for 50p. And then on payday, you could put an extra £20 in. It was really easy way. And then it invests that money for you. And I used it and opened it mainly for the lifetime ISA, because I was like, I might want to buy a property, and a lifetime ISA is of course, you can put in up to £4,000 a year. The government tops up by £1,000, and you can use it for either buying a house or a pension take it out when you're 60. And I thought, well, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? I'll take it out and I'll get that £1,000, etc. I do have to say, the Moneybox app was unbelievably brilliant for me. for my brain, and this is just my brain, I am a little bit scatty. I am not very forward thinking and great with planning, which is probably why I've rented so long, not because I like it so much, but because I couldn't bear the idea of thinking that far ahead. So for me, it was brilliant for gamification. And I did this also with my pension. I used Pension B as well. And the idea of being able to visualize my money, you know, how much I can save, invest, you know, wow, I've saved this much. That almost dopamine hit especially for someone that was in debt, to go and had got out of debt, to go, wow, actually, I can do this. This isn't that hard. And it's that gave me so much optimism, so much confidence that come when I did actually need to use it, I had a good, I want to say 30,000 in there. The problem was, and this is where I give a big warning to the lifetime ISA, you can only use it to buy a property £450,000 or less. Now, people might think, that's a lot of money. In London, that's not a lot of money. And it's not a lot of money if, like me, you took it out when you were sort of mid-30s and you wanted to buy when you were 40 and you'd met a partner who had kids. Because now you're not looking for a first-time property, you know, a studio or one bed. You're looking for a proper home. And so I had to pay the penalty, because you get charged if you take it out for any other reason than buying a home under that price, not for buying a home. So I used it for the purpose in which I had it. But unfortunately, my life circumstance just meant I had to get charged. Now, luckily, I wouldn't normally recommend this when you're saving for a property, I invested that money and had made much more in investments than the penalty. Had I just left it in cash, it wouldn't have been the case. But I'm always a bit wary. Investing is a 5 to 10 year, minimum 10 year sort of time horizon. And I obviously only gave it, I didn't even think I would give it 7, 8, but you know, I did. So that's just a word to the wise there.
I'm going to ask you a question that's really going to just ruin your optimism, but I'm sure you're going to have an optimistic thing to say, because you mentioned a lot about pensions there. What would you say to a young person now that says pension? I mean, the pension age is like 68 now. They're already talking about moving it up to like 72. By the time I get to 72, it'll probably be 80. What's the point? Are we really going to get to 80? There's not even going to be enough people in the country, because people pay it, like the pension money is being paid out now. There's not going to be enough young people to pay my pension. Why bother? Maybe I'll just do something else.
So if I offered you 50 quid now and said, or if I asked you to give me 50 quid now and I said, I'll give you back £112.50 or whatever, would you take it in the future? So that's the first thing. Pensions are an incredibly brilliant way to save for the future, because if you are employed, you put a bit of money in, your workplace puts a bit of money in, and the government gives you tax relief on it. So that's the first thing, is what you're expected to save in retirement is not quite as much as you think it would be. Time is vital. If you spent 30 years saving for retirement, or 40 years, you could double your money. Not because you would double the amount you put in, but because of the beautiful benefits of compound interest. Rolling and rolling money over to get more. So what I would say to someone who's a bit like, should I opt out of auto enrollment, for example, or if you're a freelancer particularly, I've got bills to pay and stuff. Think about not pension, not I'm never going to get this. Think about, what do I want my life to look like when I'm older? And that's essentially what we're asking. What would my future self say to me now for not doing that, for that small amount? Because it doesn't have to be a lot of money. I know it feels a lot of money, but like I said, if you put in a little bit, your workplace puts in a little bit, get the government, it really does start to grow. So I would just say, when you're thinking about, especially as freelancers, because I'm a freelancer, whenever I charge someone, I think, this is how much I'm charging for the work I'm doing. This is how much I'm charging for my tax pot. This is how much I'm charging for my pension pot. And this is how much I'm charging for sickness and holiday, because I don't get those things. So that's the way you got to think about it. What I'd also say is, you were talking there about the state pension. So the state pension at the moment is 66. It's going up to 67. And then there's talk about it going up to 68 in a few years' time. Chances are I will probably have to pay that. I don't know, or I would have to wait until that long to get my state pension. You may have to wait longer. The Institute for Fiscal Studies is saying that it may be 74. That's if we keep the triple lock. Now, the triple lock was a promise made by the Conservatives in 2010 that the state pension should have to go up by the higher of 3 things. So that is wage growth, inflation, or 2.5%. Now, we've had some stonking inflation. We know that. We've had some fairly high wage growth as well. So actually, we've seen it go up quite a lot. There was a good reason they did that. It's because for years, pensioners were getting really, really rubbish rises, and we were having pensioner poverty. Now, that seems to have largely gone, as it were. But what you're doing is you're then saying, if we're to keep this triple lock, very, very, very expensive triple lock in place, something else is going to have to give, right? If you're going to spend all your money on clothes, you ain't got any money for makeup, right? So it's that kind of thing. I'm just talking about myself there. So decisions have to be made about, is this likely to be able to be sustainable? I don't think it is. So what I'm suggesting there is we are talking about the state pension, and that is obviously the money you get from the government. Where I'm really interested in is workplace pension and personal pension, which at the moment you can take, I think it's 55, it's going up to 57. That may be going up, maybe a little bit, but it's still within at the moment your fees if you want to take it. And I don't know about you, but I don't really fancy working until 68. I mean, I don't know that I can, especially if you work in an industry like where you have to move stuff about, bricklayers or something physical. Yeah. It's going to be really hard. That's where your personal pension comes in. And if you want to retire even earlier, you might have to start thinking about like stocks and shares ISAs and all that sort of thing. But, don't panic so much about the state pension. I would also only view that. A lot of people view that as the only thing. Trust me, that is not going to be enough to get you through retirement. You have to take control. And this is where you will differ from your parents, who probably didn't. They might have had a direct benefit pension. You will have to take control.
Right. Oh, I could tell we could talk about pensions all day.
Sorry.
No, all good. I'm going to ask you one more question before we go into our fun tips round. So I wanted to just talk to you quickly about scams. Because, personally, I'm getting so irritated by how many times I have to verify it's me. I actually lost it at work the other day and said, look, I'm just going to super glue the laptop shut. That's a cheap way to keep it safe. But people are telling me, actually, AI is getting involved now. Scams are so hard to tell. It's not just, oh, come on, how could you not have told it? And so when it comes to finance and people are, maybe very desperate sometimes and they're trying to find ways out and they're looking for, what are your sort of tips for making sure people don't fall prey to financial scams?
I go, because they are going to only get more sophisticated. I think about it for me and for you, whose voices are out there. Like, there is nothing I can do. It is so, I think the BBC did, or what they're going to do, something about this very soon, about people sort of ripping off your voice. We've all heard of the Hello Mum scam on WhatsApp, of people pretending to be daughters or sons contact their mum asking for money. It is going to get more and more sophisticated. Stop, pause, just be unbelievably cynical about it. And this is where I say, don't be optimistic. Be negative, right? Yes,
we
exactly.
finally got her there,
yes.
guys. We dragged her down.
Be negative. But it's true. I think, and you're so right in when you said they prey on everyone. But it's the people that are most susceptible are the people who are desperate, and every time the government announces something like the winter fuel payment U-turn and stuff, immediately I think, oh, and therein come the scammers, anything like that, they will take advantage of. And it's the people that need it the most. Or it's people who are busy, and I think of mums and dads, time poor. Pause. Don't trust anything. Don't click on anything. If someone really wants to get hold of you, they'll get hold of you. They'll find a way, etc. And it is getting more and more hard, especially with, I don't think banks and stuff help when they go, oh, click on this link. No, don't tell us to do that, please, because I'm telling everybody not to do that. But the next thing I will say is, if you are unfortunately in this situation, you are not alone. Go to your bank immediately and get, cancel your cards, etc. Contact the police, action fraud, rather. Really don't be ashamed by it, especially things like romance frauds and stuff, which have a real element. I mean, they are cynical, but a real element of emotion involved in it. You are not stupid. You are not an idiot. It is not your fault. These people are, I can't say the word because it's rude, but they're not nice people, and they will do anything they can, and they have more and more sophisticated technology with which to do it. I'm afraid governments, banks are way behind on where they need to be to keep up with this technology. It is moving so fast. So you have to be, it's on you. Again, it's on you. You have to be extra vigilant.
I don't know about you, but I do find whenever I'm in a TV or radio studio green room, there is always chatter around things, and some of it becomes true. And one of the things that someone was saying to me the other day was, banks are definitely trying to get out of having to compensate people when they've been scammed because it's happening too regularly. Are we in a risk of that where banks are going to be saying, look, you shouldn't have married him, whatever it is, or you shouldn't have clicked that link?
I would love to get relationship advice from my bank. I mean, it can't do worse than me. Look, it's costing a huge amount of money. And the weakest link in so many of these instances, I'm afraid to say it, from the big companies that get hacked to us as individuals, is us. We are the weakest link, time and time again. I'm not suggesting that banks are going to get to a stage, and they should pay you back. Again, if you haven't done anything wrong, but again, don't rely on the situation that a bank will give you your money back. I mean, they should do, but don't rely on it. It's just, again, It is just some of the basics, and it's boring as heck to go over it, but it is. Make sure your passwords are safe. Make sure you have two-step authentication. All the
things that irritate me.
Exactly.
Sick of thumbprint, code, picture. Oh, God, I just want to check my bank balance.
I can't remember anything. What's my password? I don't know. I don't even know my name. My passwords are not my name, by the way. But, it's really hard. But, these authenticator apps are quite good that give you codes. And so I can't make them work, but apparently they're really good. It might be a bit painful. It might be a bit uncomfortable, but I tell you what, it's not going to be as painful as if you get scammed. Just think of it that way.
That's true. Right. Well, to wrap up, let's go for a tips round now. First one, best thing to do with an unexpected £1,000.
Depends who you are. Depends what you want to do. Depends where you're at. If you're in debt, it would probably be to pay off the debt, depending on whether it's high interest debt. If you're like me, who, I'll give you an example of my sort of personality here, is I had just been made redundant from a job. I had just been evicted from my house because they wanted to make more money. I did what most normal people do. I got £5,000. So it's not 1,000, but it's 5,000 from my grandma in her will. And I went to the Galapagos Islands. So, I had a lot of life to sort out, and I just did what any self-respecting person would do, and I just dumped it all and was like, I'll deal with that later, and had the most amazing trip. I wouldn't have remembered that if I'd have paid, I don't know, put it into a savings account and, but I do remember
you're
the
so
fact
right. Have you ever seen the meme of bless them, it's an old couple and they're on the gondolas in Italy, and it says, the caption is something like, we'll do that tomorrow or something like that. And it's kind of like, you've been all responsible your whole life to have fun in retirement, and now you've fallen asleep on a gondola. So there is a balance.
I am a huge proponent of that. Look, I'm not saying go spank every penny you have. No. It's about what brings you value, getting the most out of your money, saving on things that really I'm not hitting on coffee here. I mean, I love coffee, but it's like you have to think, does it really give you value? Or whatever else you spend a lot of money on, buying clothes, is it really great? Or could you use that money to travel the world? Because money ultimately is there you need to enjoy it. You need to enjoy life. We don't know what's around the corner. You don't know that when you reach 60, you might have some really debilitating issue that, I had a major back injury. If that resurrects itself when I'm older and I can't go and do the things that I've done, do you know what? I've already done them, because that's how I prioritize my life and spending. So, there's a nice balance to be had here.
Yeah. What's the first thing you tell someone who's in debt and doesn't know where to start?
Open up. Be honest with yourself. Be honest. And like I say, I've been here before. Get your head out of the sand, right? Get a pen and paper, or talk to a friend, list what you owe. If it's really bad, contact brilliant charities like Step Change or National Debtline. That can feel quite a big thing for people. I got a 0% credit card. Not everybody's entitled to one, and I did have to pay a little bit of a fee to get it, but that was an utter game changer because I stopped paying so much interest in credit card debt and started actually paying off the debt. But the unbelievable first thing to do is get your head out of the sand.
On a sort of similar thing, people that are maybe not in debt, but they're starting to have to go into their savings every month. They've got a pot, whatever that pot is, and actually now they're starting to claw some of it out. Arguably, is that not what it's there for when times are tough, or is it, you should never really have to use those savings.
If people are using savings just for day-to-day stuff.
Just to make ends meet every month, as in like, oh, you know what, the monthly bills outgoings are just getting too tight. I'm having to dip into my savings just to keep things moving.
Okay, so first of all, is it a question of, and I used to do this, I would just move money in a very kind of like overexcited way and go, yeah, I can save all this money. And then I just end up dragging it back. Or is it a case of actually things are more expensive and you are having to dip into your savings? Now, if you're doing that as a one-off, something happens, boiler breaks, car, teeth, all happen at once, whatever, that's absolutely what emergency savings are there for. If you're finding yourself doing it all the time, then I think it's time to start looking at where you can cut back. Otherwise, you're going to get to a point where you run dry of your savings. And then what do? Credit cards, payday loans. We don't want to go down there. It is a great warning sign for you to really start taking a look. And this is what things like going into overdrafts and stuff are. As I say, for the one-offs, yeah, absolutely. That's what it's there for. Regularly, that pattern of behavior is telling you something. Listen to it and act. And that's where you sit down, have a conversation. If you're in a couple, vital, do it together. One thing I would say to anyone who is making the first move out of debt or wanting to get their life, getting their financial life in order, getting your friends and family on board is critical. Because I don't know about you, but I remember when I first started trying to get out of debt, the number of people, you could really tell your friends here, that would be like, let's go to this really expensive place. Whereas and I'm just one of those people that's like, okay, yeah, because money's embarrassing. You don't want to say to people like, I can't afford it. But the real friends would be like, let's go for a walk in the park, or I'll come over, or why don't you come over and we'll make a meal or something. You need people on your side to help you.
That is really good advice. Just a few more. Lottery tickets. Waste of investable cash, or you've got to be in it to win it?
So I saw a video on Instagram and this really annoyed me, actually. And it was a guy who was like, yeah, Mr. Motivating kind of guy, muscles out, all that sort of thing. And he was like, yeah, I saw this woman, you know the type. No, I don't know the type, but anyway, who went in, she bought herself a scratch card. She could have invested that money in a stocks and shares ISA. You don't know that she hasn't maxed out her stocks and shares ISA, by the way. But to me, that just represented the most unbelievable snobbery, but also a real lack of understanding about how people spend their money, who they are, individuals, etc. I thought one of the biggest problems about economics is something called economics man, right? I'm sorry, this is not a feminist thing. This is just what it's called, right? Is that we assume that people behave in really rational and reasonable ways. And look, yeah, if you have that money, save it. And of course we should be doing that because, what gives us the best sort of utility, as it were, you're very unlikely to win the lottery. So you're probably better off putting it into a very sensible, well, in that case, why don't you make your own clothes? Why don't you just don't buy, coffee? Don't do any of the things that give you joy or hope. One thing I would say about lotteries, if you take a look at the figures, and I for some reason only have the ones in America, but the people in the lowest socioeconomic band spend the most on lottery tickets, and sometimes upwards of 10% of their income on lottery. And what that says is they do not believe that the system in which they're working already, the financial system, will provide for them. It's desperate hope. So I think that's also another element that I think about when I think about people buying it. It is a bit of fun if you want to do it. I don't gamble. I don't really play it. Don't really see the point. Do I invest that money? Some of it. But yeah, no, I don't really do it. But if you want to do it, I don't have any issue with you doing it. You want to drink, you drink. If you want to do that, fine. But I would say there's also a sort of an element of, do people feel that there is no hope for them to get money in any other way, via savings, investing, working in another job? And that's also something to think about.
Yeah. One last question on our tips then. So how much money should someone have in their emergency fund? And I'm obviously people on different things, but I'm talking about sort of a percentage. I know some people go for, well, in an ideal world, I'd have 3 months of my wages saved away in case anything happens. I can support myself for 3 months. I don't know who can afford to do that now, but what would you say is a good amount or percentage to have in your emergency fund?
So the financial journalist, financial advisor response is 3 to 6 months of essential outgoings in an easy access savings account so that if something happens, like you say, you lose your job, then there's a bit of security there. Where they say 6 months is anything more than that, then you should probably be thinking about investing that money to make the most out of that money. What I would say is forget about the figure. Forget about the 3 to 6 months right now. If you're in a situation, if you're not on the other side of that, i.e. looking at investing because you've got all this money in savings, and you're more on the lower side, just getting started, that is the one tip. It is just to get started. And I will give you a little tale to leave you with of the first time that I really felt confident to start saving. Do you remember those ceramic pots that you could get from like Athena and stuff like that? You'd save it in cash. God, do you remember cash? And you used to save money, right? And then you'd smash it and you'd have some money in it. And this wasn't actually that long ago. This was I was still a financial journalist. I think I just had a back operation, etc. Before I moved into finance, when I was a sports journalist, before I moved into finance, and I had accidentally smashed it, but I had managed to save like 350 quid in it. I thought, wow, that actually wasn't that hard. And this is where Moneybox and the like are quite useful, is you go, that's not actually that uncomfortable. So it's just about getting started. Then you can start building it up. And once you realize that actually savings is, can be part of your routine, then you can start looking at, have I got 3 to 6 months? But do not be frightened off doing it by saying, that's such a big number, I'll never achieve it, so why bother? And this is the problem. I think too often we give people unrealistic targets that then they think, oh God, what's the point? Head goes back in the sand and you don't do anything. No, you can get there. Lots of things, they take hard work. I would say, first of all, it's pay yourself first. When you get paid, make sure that you put a little bit into a savings account. You don't even notice it. When you get a pay rise, make sure some of that pay rise, if not all of it, goes into a savings account or investing if you've got to the higher end of that. But don't be frightened by the number. Just get started, do what you can, and maybe a little bit more, because you probably can as well.
And that is great advice to end on. Georgie Frost, thank you so much. This has been really enjoyable, and I have really appreciated the optimism.
Rare nowadays in finance, but here to please.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.